Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this episode of Nerd Caliber. I'm here with Dovah Design again, and we're going to talk about Dark Souls. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about my Artorias the Abysswalker cosplay that won the Nerd Caliber Summer Cosplay Contest series this year.
Yes, yes, congratulations. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, wow. How did you start making this costume?
Yeah, so I started from the very beginning. Basically, I have a duct tape mannequin I made of myself that I made paper and masking tape patterns to create on top of. So basically, I actually used this little guy that I have. I'm sure some of you at home recognize this little figurine of Artorias. So I use this as reference because it was nice to be able to turn him around, look at the back, look at the front, and create the patterns based on this little miniature. So what I actually did was used, again, paper and masking tape, kind of wrapped it around the form and drew on it, cut it into several pieces to get all of my templates for each of the armor pieces. A lot of different things, but started from the very basics, gonna make a paper pattern and work up from there.
Okay. So I guess, wow. Well, let's show off the sword also that you have. Can you show that to our
Yeah, sure.
viewers?
Yeah. So the sword is 5.5 feet long. Let me scoot back a bit. Here we go. Ta-da!
Oh,
So
wow.
it looks a little smaller when I'm in the armor, like I feel like I look bigger in the armor, but it's as tall as me. So if I stand up here, it's yeah, we're both off the camera for reference.
Oh, wow. Um, is it heavy? I mean, wow. How'd you make that?
So it's about 5 pounds. So for something that you have to carry around all day to convention, that's pretty heavy. I mean, as far as something that you can just like pick up off the ground, 5 pounds doesn't seem like a lot, but yeah, all day it gets to be much. So originally the blade for this was sculpted using XPS foam, which is kind of it's the insulation pink foam that you would get at Home Depot. So I got a really big sheet of it, made the blade portion, and then really it's there's a lot that went into it. This centerpiece right here with the wolf face, that was actually XPS foam as well that I made a pattern with. I traced the in-game art. And then actually went in and did, I don't know if you guys are, hey, it's gonna be Halloween season. So what I did was I actually did like the pumpkin carving method where you like print out the pattern on paper, lay it on top of like a pumpkin. And you normally like poke where your pattern and your cuts are gonna be. That's what I did to actually transfer my paper pattern onto the foam. And then from there, I had to Dremel and hand sand and create the actual designs in here and layering. So there's a little bit of like layers to it too, you can kind of see. But then I actually cast it. So it was a 1-part mold. So basically I attached it to a flat back and then covered it with rubber so that I could take it off and then fill the rubber to make the opposite side as well. So the positive of this had 2 of those molds. I did kind of the same thing with some PVC pipe and clay for each of the, make sure I have a fan. For each of the pieces of the hilt here as well, the crossguard. So this whole section from here out was also another mold that I made 2 of, put together, then put that on the PVC pipe base, and then cast this whole piece. So lots of different parts again, but then both of these ended up, these are actually made out of a brush on epoxy that you can get. I get mine from Reynolds Advanced Materials. So this was actually, I need to, what's that? Oh, it's a epoxy coat gray is the name of the brush on epoxy that these are made out of. So
Oh, wow. So how do you carry that around cons without, I don't know, killing people?
so luckily on the Artorias armor, all of this fabric allows me to easily just like rest it on my armor without actually like scratching any of the paint or denting anything. So pretty much leaning it on my shoulder all day, holding it with one hand.
Oh, okay, okay. So I mean, wow, we could go like for hours talking about each detail of that cosplay. Why don't you share with us, I guess, some of the the biggest challenges you had in making it? What were some of the most difficult things about putting this together?
Individual piece to make was by far the sword, just because like I was saying, there were so many different molds and components, and it did take, I think, the longest just on the sword. The other difficult things actually The helmet. So the helmet was my first time using clay called monster clay, which is really popular in mold making in the cosplay community. But basically, you make a positive sculpt with the monster clay, and then do a brush on rubber. So it was just I had made brush on molds before, but really trying to get the helmet symmetrical, like by hand, and doing that with clay was pretty difficult. And then actually having to like cut off one of his ears, like I call them ears, like there's a wolf crown. You have to cut one of them off because he doesn't have it in the game. That was kind of hard to do, but that's for a different reason, of course. It was more like, my symmetry. And then the wig wefts and things like that. I'm not really good at cutting and styling wigs, so that was pretty, get them in there really and hold this shape where they're sticking up. That wasn't very fun. So I would say the helmet was pretty difficult. Really, I'm pretty familiar with Warbler, so the act of actually like sculpting the warble wasn't extremely difficult for me, but getting the pattern right is always hard for me. I'm a perfectionist as far as like, oh, this is over layered too much, or oh, this isn't the right shape. So with certain pieces like the greaves, which are his shin leg armor, I made those maybe like 3 times. I tried it with EVA foam. I tried it again with Warbler. I tried it with EVA foam and then settled back on Warbler. So that was difficult as well, just really being particular and perfect about how everything looked. But
Oh wow! So I have to ask: is this comfortable? Is this heavy?
it's not heavy. It's not comfortable. So, you're kind of stiff and things rub together. And funny enough, so your Zoom background's awesome. And he's got, Artorias has like a limp left arm. When I'm in the costume, I actually can't really get my arm straight the way that he holds it because the elbow armor and like the top part of the rarer brace and the brace are actually all kind of crunches together. So it kind of looks like I'm still doing one of these when I'm like trying to pose with the straight arm. Also, and the shoes, which I actually have here. So the shoes look kind of like they're just this little 2-inch heel. The heel comes up to about here, and then I have a 4-inch insert in here. So I'm actually walking like on my toes because I'm pretty average. I'm 5'6", so I wanted to be as tall as I could. So this added about, if it's 4 from about 8 inches to my height, so I felt a little bit taller and a little more menacing. So yeah, not comfortable, but also not heavy. I mean,
Oh,
plastic and foam.
wow! If for some reason you lost all this and you had to start all over, would you do anything different?
um, I'm thinking, oh god. I would obviously skip the whole try EVA foam for the greaves and then go back to Warbler and back and forth. So I would stick just to Warbler for most of it, just because I'm more comfortable with it, and I felt like I was able to get thinner pieces out of each layer for his armor. So, like for example, a lot of the pieces that go into this are layered for his armor. So I didn't want them to be super thick, and I didn't want to make something like this that I'm going to be moving around with a lot on my arm. I didn't want to make this out of foam because I would be worried it would rip or like not really hold a good shape. So I would stick to Warbler if I had to redo it again.
Okay. Well, if someone looks at this, I mean, if I wanted to cosplay this character, and if I saw what you made, I would feel so. I think the word I used previously was overwhelmed. Like I was like, wow, I wouldn't know where to start. What would you say to someone like that? Where like, wow, this looks amazing, but where can they? How can they start something like this?
Yeah, I would suggest starting with one piece at a time. So I mean, like something smaller. So like, let's start with this. Like this is actually a rarer brace, which goes up on the top of your arm. So it's not a huge piece. It's easy to work on yourself with something like your arm or maybe even your forearm for something like a bracer. So I would say start with something small, start with a piece that you're comfortable working on or that you're easily able to work on, like a forearm or like your leg, something that you can kind of make a pattern on and manipulate without needing to worry about, oh, it's my body and I can't hold it. And then I would get some test material. So like I said, I like using Worbla. That really might not work for everybody. So maybe get a small little tester sheet of Worbla and see if you like working with it, or get a really small roll of EVA foam and see if you actually prefer working with that. And people with different body types too, you might feel better in EVA armor than I do. Like if you're able to actually I feel like if I was actually like a 6-foot tall man, EVA foam would actually look more proportional to my body. So that might make sense to do that. But yeah, start small. Don't, take it one step at a time and work on something easy to move around with. That's what I would say.
Okay. What can you tell us about the? I mean, to me, it looks like a scarf or the blue
Yeah.
fabric. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So on Artorias, he has this really tattered. I call it a cowl. You could call it a cape. It probably was once a cape, or possibly even a tabard. He's a knight. So I call it a cowl. This was actually a beige or light gray kind of linen that I wanted to use linen to make sure that I could like rip it and kind of get a nice texture on all of the ends and fray it really well. And he also has a design on here, like it's typically like a really faded like white kind of knightly pattern. So in order to get that on there, the reason I actually bought the lighter colored linen and not something that was pre-dyed was so that I could do a batik dye. It's my easy version rather of a batik dye. So typically batik uses wax put on top of fabric, and then you dye the fabric, and the wax doesn't allow the dye to penetrate anywhere that you've put the wax. So I did that with some fabric glue, which dissolves a lot faster when you're dyeing it, but it still allowed me to get a good amount of dye and resist portions of it to get the pattern on the linen as I was dyeing it. So I had to hand add all of the glue and his design to the fabric, then dye it, take it out, distress it, and sew it. And in order to make sure that I could get it over my head easily, and also get it under his left pauldron and over the right, this hood part inside of here comes out, so it's a separate piece. So I didn't make one whole big cowl piece. I made the head, and then separately kind of the part that goes around his neck, and it velcros into a gorget that I added here, which I don't think is necessarily accurate probably to the game, but I knew it would kind of help give me that neck that he has, that kind of height to it, and allow me to velcro in the cowl so it wasn't shifting around as I was walking all day.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, is there anything about the armor that I have not covered yet that you want to talk about that you maybe put a lot of work and time into?
Yeah, I have two things that I think are pretty cool that I'd like to show. One is actually all of the sculpting that's on top of here. It's hard to see here, but I can send you some pictures so that people can see it a little bit better. But this was all hand done with epoxy sculpt. So this part isn't Warbler. I'm pretty proud of the work that I did on that. And then also, I can show you kind of a closer up picture of actually what I did to distress the armor. So this is kind of hard to see on here as well, but basically before I started painting the Warbler, I took a heat tool to make some random scratches and dents across all of the armor. And then of course dyed that, or excuse me, painted it rather as well, with a lot of highlights and lowlights to really make the whole bit of armor look very distressed. And Warbler has a nice kind of like not smooth texture to begin with. But then to add a little bit more texture too, I added a really messy layer, if you will, and kind of splotches of Bondo spot putty. So it's this kind of cool, really sneaky material. I'll need to wear a gas mask with it, but a ventilator rather with it. But I spread a little bit of that in kind of goopy spots to get some more raised texture on the armor as well. And that's across all of the armored pieces. Then also his chainmail is about 3,000 links of European 6-in-1 that I also hand linked. So that took a long time.
Wow.
But yeah.
Wow, yeah, I have friends that have done that, and they've a lot of them have carpal tunnel from the amount of chain links that they've done.
Yeah, like the little there. Yeah, I made myself this cool little rig with like a little plank of wood, and I put a bunch of nails in the top so I could kind of like layer it a bit easier, which helped immensely compared to the first time I tried to do chainmail. But it, still 3,000 rings. It's no joke.
Okay, so before we wrap up, would you like to share with us your social media so that people can follow more of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mostly post on Instagram. I am at Dovah Design, Dovah. I'm sure Manny will put that up on the screen for you. I'm also on Facebook. I'm less active there. And I have my own website at dovahdesign.com. If anyone's in the market for a commission costume prop, hit me up on my website. Free estimates.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for showing me this. This is, again, fantastic. And thank you, our viewers, for watching. And stay tuned for more cosplay content. Have a great day.